Hello, everyone, and welcome back to As It Goes. I'm Lydia, the host of As It Goes and the founder of Reself, the Conscious Living Studio. You know, we're all just figuring it out as it goes, and conversations help us along the way. This week's conversation is so just warms my heart ever since I found out about Light Phone and what Joe and Kai are building. I was so excited, and now I'm so excited to share them and the Light Phone and this conversation about what it looks like and how possible and realistic and value-driven it is to return smartphones and eventually technology to tools that work for us rather than us being designed to be addicted to and enslaved to these items of technology. So if you're curious about what your life can look and feel like with a new relationship to your smartphone or rethinking your autonomy over your technology, sit back, relax, watch the clouds, and dive into this conversation with Joe and Kai of Light. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, of course. My name is Kai. Me and Joe started Light Phone in 2015. My background is in product design research, and I also trained as engineer in college. I'm acting as a CEO and co-founder of Light at the moment.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and my name is Joe, and I come from a design, art, and film background. And I met Kai in 2014, and that's sort of when we started this Light project. And I work mostly in the kind of the brand voice and marketing side of things, but we all wear a lot of hats here at this little startup of ours.
For sure. Beautiful segue into how did Light get started? What was that process of coming up with the idea? Was this something that was kind of always on both of your hearts prior to creating this awesome product? And let's start there.
I'm happy to start with this. Yeah, so it was in 2014 that Google, ironically of all companies, had this idea for an experiment. It was an experimental incubator called 30 Weeks. And the hypothesis was that if given the right resources and guidance, designers, myself and Kai included, might come up with ideas for a new wave of technology companies. It was a very open-ended and, kind of curious endeavor, but I would say that neither of us went in with the Light Phone in mind. But the premise of the program was quickly meeting like dozens of founders, investors, and just general thought leaders in the technology landscape. And we realized quite quickly that there was this trend, people really wanted us to make smartphone apps, and that the kind of underlying business model for almost all of them was make something sticky. If your product was something that people were using for hours a day, they could collect all sorts of data, sell all sorts of ads. And, this was basically the kind of universal business model. And I think Kaiwei and I sort of immediately reacted to that by saying, could being more connected to some app that we might create make us any happier? Or, are what we are really craving, or the users we interviewed actually were habitually overwhelmed and looking for some sort of escape. So we started experimenting with this idea of going light before even really thinking of the phone itself. As a kind of reaction to the landscape.
Yeah.
I was gonna add the research that we're doing was just really scary, meaning that you sit down in a park and train station and airport, and this is like 2015, when Apple Watch just being introduced, and you sit down and you look up, I just see everyone swiping and staring at a little screen. It's like, what's so interesting on a little screen? Why are we, giving up what's around us, the people next to us, the sky, the trees? Like, why are we just giving all up for this little screen? So it just feels wrong from I guess from a human perspective. It's like, is that really where we wanted to go? And why isn't there a company or a technology brand that trying to do something different? Why this has to be the way it is? So I think that just kind of reason why we started the company, the brand, trying to create an option instead of just accepting smartphone and social media is the way to go. And as a designer, you always wanted to create one thing that do one thing really well. You create an object that do one thing well, and you can't really create an object that does everything for everyone. It's just not how it works. Otherwise, all the special experience that we have, like using a camera, driving a really well-made car, all this little object I would design for one purpose are special. And with smartphone, nothing is special. It's just, you have millions of apps trying to make money off your attention, time, and data. There's nothing special anymore.
Yeah. And I think, that raises such an important question of who is this product built for then at the end of the day? If, like you described with the experience at Google, and it's so ironic that that's where this came out of, but also I think really fitting and clearly speaks to both of you and, what matters to you in being in that experience and environment, and coming up with sort of what I would say is like an antithesis to that whole pathway of technology. Yeah, I think it's, I like what you said, Kai, about the special things and, thinking of a camera and even thinking of the uptake of people's interest in film cameras right now. And that idea that on one roll, you've got 25 pictures. On your camera, you can take thousands and it doesn't matter. But those 25 pictures have to matter, and you have to be conscious about it. Is a really, it's a great example of this.
Joe can speak to the film camera that we've both been taking, but I think he took a lot of our photos recently. But yes, object, in my opinion, is always inspire people, always inspire actions. And
Even
I think that's
pencil and paper, like something so analog versus a note
Well,
app.
that's why we design different objects with different purpose, so that inspire actions. So part of the reason iPhone is its own hardware. It's a different user interface. It's a e-ink, e-paper screen, black and white. Part of the reason is that we want to make that going light, experience special. So when you pick it up, you feel like you are making intentional decisions to break away, to pay attention to what's around you versus getting lost in social media. So we try to make that experience special, so more people will give it a try. More people could take that first step, because we both realize that getting off or breaking away from your smartphone is not a normal thing. It's like getting off addiction right now, right? So It's not gonna right away. So you got to take that first step, and hopefully, that users realize that it is okay to not have millions in app with you 24/7. It is okay to just like standing there and be bored, or look around, or having conversation, right? It is fine. It's enough, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we, were first making the light phone, I think we thought of ourselves almost as the kind of ideal user. But I would say it's been really inspiring to see just how wide of a demographic we've hit. I would still say it's mostly like 25 to 35-year-olds, but in terms of like geographical and demographical differences, like I think we thought, artists in the cities, people that are freelancing that maybe need help setting boundaries between online and offline, because now your smartphone is your job and you're bringing it on a date at night and first thing you wake up to. But it's been really inspiring to see like Bible Belt families buying it to spend more quality time with their families, to CEOs or even students who want to focus as a kind of productivity tool. We're seeing musicians and celebrities as a kind of like buffer from the paparazzi and the social media that it's just constant in their own lives, to outdoors seeing people who want to be on the mountain, not be tempted to check their dating app or something. So it's really hit such a wide chord, and that's super inspiring, I think, because you can tell. Yeah, go ahead, Kai. Sorry.
Right. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can just tell that this is a problem that's everyone's feeling, and internationally too, not just in the US. In fact, like I think Europe and Australia almost resonated more immediately when we launched the light phone. Again, as Kai said, this was back in 2015, so a lot of people were like, my smartphone's the best thing that's ever happened to me still. But as the years have gone on, we've really seen the kind of acknowledgement that it's maybe not such a inherently positive experience. And then hear about these data breaches, or films like Social Dilemma come out, and actually even Apple coming out with the screen time feature, I think was really almost an admitting from Tim Cook himself, that hey, maybe things are getting a little out of hand. And I think people seeing that number, like, oh, I'm not addicted to my phone, and then you see 5.5 hours, 6.5 hours a day, you're like, well, maybe I could be spending that time doing something more meaningful.
Totally.
Yeah. We also realize, getting off smartphone is not as easy as it sounds. We're not saying that everyone should just get off this smartphone 100%. We're saying that, hey, we all have different shoes, different car designed for different purpose. There's nothing wrong with having a different tool that's not, built on top of attention economy. That's built, not trying to make money off my time, attention. It's not trying to maximize engagement regardless the cost, right? So it's, it could be your secondary phone. We have a lot of people using light phone too as their only phone. We have parents buying it for the kids' phone. But it's all, to us, is all very positive, very encouraging to us. We didn't design light phone for kids. We designed light phone for ourselves. But parents find it interesting, then that's awesome. But what we want to do is offering a tool that's designed from ground up, that's different from all the smartphone and app out there, without the business model that trying to keep you on regardless your mental situations, or regardless the impact that the product is bringing to us.
I love that you keep calling it a tool, because I think that's one of the most important reminders for all of us about something that's become so prevalent in our lives across the board, that this was something that was designed to be a tool for us. And in so many ways, like you touched on with the addiction of social media, and just again, like attention economy in general, and how much time we actually can spend interacting with this product, is the fact that, in so many ways, we've become slaves to the phone.
Yeah, again, like we all have toolbox in your house, in garage, right? We know we have a toolbox, and you don't think about your toolbox all the time. You just know you have it. Like, oh, okay. I mean, I have hammers in my house. If I need it, I could bring it up. You don't use your hammer and swipe your hammer for 5 hours so the hammer company can make money, right? You just have a tool and you forget about it. And as a matter of fact, that one of the best compliment we got from our customers are, like they're saying they went out, go light for the whole weekend and forget about they even have a phone with them. They're like, oh, like I don't know I have a phone. I don't even, know I bought a light phone with me. It was like, that's perfect because
Yeah.
it's never about the phone, right? It's just never, it shouldn't be about the phone at all.
They have the peace of mind that if an emergency happens, mom, grandma, relatives can call. But in fact, yeah, actually, we've been working with the school, and I think, some of the kids are like, there's so little you can do. I just leave it in the dorm room. And it's like, that's awesome. Like, and the teachers are saying, well, all the students at meals are talking where they used to, any sort of lull in conversation. And you see it with adults too. Everyone's pulling out their phone. They're out at dinner together and everyone's on their phone, or a couple. And so yeah, designed to be used as little as possible is kind of the philosophy. And it stems all the way back to those early tests when we just basically took people's smartphone for an afternoon and gave them a flip phone. And we realized no one used the flip phone. They told us about, I went to the park and I had a great time. I read 2 books, I caught up with so-and-so, but then we looked at their call log and it was just a peace of mind. And the real value was not, can the light phone text this? Can the light phone do that? Can the light phone? It's actually just, the experience of what we call going light.
I was in a conference a while back, and I think a few parents came up and asked me about light phone and tools. I was like, I don't have kids, so I don't, I'm not gonna pretend I know how to bring up a kids with smartphone age, right? But my perspective is that, every tools, every app in your smartphones, it's just like tool. So when you trying to teach your kids how to use a tool, you're gonna give them like unlimited huge toolbox without telling them what tools does what. You don't do that. You present one tool, you talk about it, and we should treat the app that way too. Like, okay, maybe, like, oh, we talk about social media, right? Like how social media make money. What are the impacts? What are you giving up? Why are they free? Right. So understand each tools and make a conscious decisions of what to use. What are essentials are just so important. Even like our conversation with our users too, right? That's the most interesting conversation we have with our customers. Like, what's essential? Why, why can I, why don't you add a camera to light phone? Are you adding more tools? Now it becomes a smartphone. Why are you adding tools? Like, we never say that we are anti-technology or anti-smartphone. We're just saying that I love modern tools, but I just don't want it to be built on top of advertisement, right? So yeah, tools is essential concept in anything we do in terms of introducing new features.
Yeah. How would each of you describe your own personal experience of going light?
Well, I guess I haven't had a smartphone now for at least 4 years that we've been kind of prototyping the light phone too. And even before that, I think Kai and I were experimenting with, what if we strip everything off a smartphone? And, funny thing that happens when you do that, it's a great first step. And I'd encourage anyone, before trying a light phone, there's things you can do to your smartphone to start. But ultimately, every test we've done, yeah, maybe I'm not on Instagram, but now I'm on Craigslist looking at instruments I can't afford, or, the phone is so, smartphone is so, there. And then if we're sitting on the couch bored for a second, you're like, what can I do? And it was sort of irresistible in that way. And I think, going to the light phone, it's just amazing because especially for running the business, like I have my laptop, how I'm speaking to you now, it separates things like email. So it's like I have, these times of day where I have my laptop and I have a full keyboard and I can really focus and do my email, and then I can close it and focus on other tasks that require that kind of undistracted, working on design or different ideas we have, thinking bigger picture. Where email, it's just, if it's coming in like whack-a-mole, it's really hard to get any serious thinking done. So I think, obviously we're embodying the philosophy that we preach, but I think it actually makes me much more productive day to day to have the light phone. And I haven't really found too many inconveniences. I mean, subtle things like not having a way to view a QR code at a restaurant. Maybe occasionally, since the pandemic has caused me to ask the waitress, well, what might you eat? And you end up talking, why don't you have a smartphone? And so I think, even just the conversations that we hear about light phone users, pulling it out, maybe they're not going to commit that day to going light, but everyone is like, man, I wish I could do that.
Yes, I hear that so much. I stopped using social media when I was a senior in high school, and that is always the response I get about setting that boundary with myself. And I think it's so telling about where we are.
Setting boundaries is the perfect word for it too, because I think, people feel that there's this expectation that you need to reply to every text, email immediately. But actually, if your friends and colleagues kind of, if you talk about it, which we have the agency to do, you realize like, it's quite a simple conversation. Our team knows Joe might not be checking his email at 8 p.m. If it's urgent, let's, call him or text him. And, we kind of all set that expectations, whether it's a partner or a best friend, a roommate, I think we have more agency than we give ourselves the credit for.
Yeah, I feel like our experience is pretty much the same as any users of light phone. It's, we recognize that there might be inconvenience, but at the same time, I myself find that if you make this trip of like going late, like you thought about it, you intentionally choose to go late or use light phone, say Saturday morning, right? So when you encounter those inconveniences, like, oh, I love this cloud, I want to take photos of this thing, and you don't have camera, then you're just like, oh yes, I don't have camera because I decided not to bring my smartphone. I'm just gonna standing here enjoy this cloud, like, and I think that helps a lot of our users, even ourselves, to get through some of the inconvenience that might happen, even like ride sharing, right? Oh, I don't have way to call Uber, but I guess I'll just walk,
Right.
So that's like, I think the constant conflict between what's convenient and what are we giving up for the convenience are healthy. I think it.
Yeah, I would actually say to that camera point, I've interviewed a couple of moms in particular who say it's become a huge weight lifted off of them. They thought at first, like, not having a camera, how am I going to photograph my, recently born kid? But they're like, I was taking hundreds of photos a day and felt this pressure to document. But like when I was a kid, I don't know, there's a few dozen photos in a scrapbook, and that's kind of enough. And I think the parents said, like,
I thought buy a phone camera. You always buy a digital camera that actually designed to take photos or videos if you are in a special event that need to be documented, right? Like you always do that. Like you have special tool designed to do that. But like every time we talk about light phone, everyone has some reason why this is difficult, and we know it. I know it's difficult. We never say it's going to be easy. We never say light phone is going to like cure our smartphone addiction right away. But I think it's necessary to take a step back and thinking about what do we have versus what technology company trying to make, try to take from us, right? But
I mean, it's like any lifestyle change. If you wanted to eat healthier, if you want to go back to school, these aren't easy things. It's not just like, oh, I bought a blender and now I'm magically going to eat vegetables every single meal, or I signed up for school, now you still have to put in the hours and the work, and so when we're adding tools, it's really with the goal of like reducing the friction, but ultimately there's going to be some friction because we're asking you to, I guess, break an addiction. We've kind of avoided using the word addiction for a while, talking about phones, but I think there's enough studies and proof and just users that kind of use that word with us that it honestly is like a withdrawal.
It's very obvious, isn't it? Like we go to bed with our smartphone, wake up with smartphone, we go to
Bathroom
bath with
smartphone. Yeah.
You're like somebody taking shower with a smartphone. You like it's fascinating that we think this is okay. I just never. It just seems so weird at how are we doing this as human. Like, I understand that if there's nothing outside, no sky, we all have just ruining our life with climate change per se, right? So you live in a box, put on your goggle and headphones. There's no way to go, and you do that, which is fine, right? But we're not there yet.
That's a dystopian future, I guess.
We're not there yet, and I don't think we want to go there. So why are we ourselves in that, like, trying to mimic that
I like
situation?
that. I think it's really clear too, like with that dystopian image, and even how you described in your earlier moments of that feeling, and I have this all the time, and it makes me really sad. Like when you look up around you and you see everyone on their phones, I think for me, it's a sad thing to see. And I like how you kind of said, Kai, I think there is something to be said about when we normalize that experience in the smartphone sort of dystopian future and accepting it into our way of being, versus, which almost is like priming the path to like, that is the future, that like AI, Neuralink, like these are the things that are evidently coming down the pike and we just can't stop them. It's not true. And I think, those two words of intentionality and oh God, what was the other word that you used? The intentionality behind it, and that sort of friction between convenience and discomfort is so important. Like, is that not how humanity actually progresses? Is that not how we actually grow as people, as being in that place of, yes, I have the tools, but I'm also uncomfortable? And I think that, the camera thing is a really interesting, again, image, because, from a philosophical point of view, looking at like the aesthetic experience of watching a sunset, right? If we take the picture, in a sense, it ruins the moment, versus I have no option here to try to capture this except to be in this moment as much as I possibly can. And that is the reward in and of itself. And the beautiful thing is the sun will set tomorrow and the next day.
I know. We hear of a lot of people who are like, I realized I would get to the top of the hike, shoot the photo, and then just kind of keep it moving. And it's like they didn't actually sit and embrace. One of our users said they just went to the Eiffel Tower, and he was like, on this smartphone, I could have, looked up infinite photos of the Eiffel Tower. Why would I take a photo? But I sat there and I doodled it. And, he's like, it was a really bad sketch, but the process of staring at it and looking at the building, he's like, I looked at the Eiffel Tower with my own eyes. And I thought, that was kind of amazing change of speed. It's like, I sat there for 10 minutes looking at it closely, trying my best to draw it as a non-artist. And he was like, that process made me feel like I was at the Eiffel Tower more than if I had just gone with the smartphone, snapped it, and then, started drinking wine and talking about other things.
The whole thing becomes like, okay, thinking about where to share, how to share, who is gonna like these photos and all that, right? So philosophically, I think that's really important realization, is that watching this, like standing there watching sunset, like there should be enough. That should be so fulfilling for you. Like you yourself, like we all experienced that sunset. We should tell ourselves that's enough. It's so beautiful. It's not, like obviously if you have a great camera, take a photo, whatever, but it's a different purpose to take a photo and sharing that with people that you care about. And it's not mutually exclusive. You could enjoy the sunset by yourself without thinking about sharing or where to post a photo all the time, 24/7.
That reminds me just of like attention span, like the inability to actually even enjoy the present when it's happening, because the smartphone has us thinking so rapidly that we're like, well, what are we doing next? Where are we going to dinner after the hike? Or, whatever it is, instead of just being content. And I think, we talked a lot about the friction of going light and this kind of withdrawal, but I think the really beautiful thing we're seeing time and time again from users is if you can kind of overcome that wall of FOMO and start instead spending those 4.5, 5.5, 6.5 hours a day reading, learning music, spending time with your friends, spending time with yourself, it's a more meaningful thing, and that actually snowballs. So like, you might start by this is kind of hard. I'm thinking about my phone or whatever. And then in a week or 2 weeks, you don't even care. You're like, I don't even want to know what's on Instagram. Who cares? I'm obsessed with this new book, and now I'm starting a new hobby. And, when we hear about like what someone's done pre and post light phone, and it's really they do it. The light phone's just the catalyst. It's really a full lifestyle change for a lot of people, and I think that's so amazing. But it does require self-initiation, intentionality, and persistence. But I think we try to tell our users, if you go into it with an idea of like, I want to read these books, I want to, like the bucket list, and we all probably have the infinite bucket list of things we wish we did more of. When you ever get anxious, start reading a book, start doing the things that you like to do, cook, whatever it is. We try not to prescribe too much, like I like to learn piano, but maybe someone doesn't care about that. It's whatever you want to do. And I think that's kind of beautiful, where the algorithm's always going to be like, no, you should do this, you should do that. People
I like
have
that.
their own agency, and they feel like I'm making my decisions on how I want to spend my day, versus like, Instagram, tell me how to feel.
That was the other word, agency. And I think that, what you just described there is exactly why that's so, so, so important. And really, how much of a difference, like you said, that snowball effect makes in our well-being and in our lives. And I think the most important thing, even what you described about dinner, right? Think what's for dinner, what's next, what's this, what's that. Never being able to be present is, when we zoom out back into like the grand perspective of things, for all we know, this day is all that we have, right? And that to be in each moment, be in this conversation, be in the next, moving slowly between things intentionally, right? With choice, makes all the difference. It's the entire quality of our life. And I've sort of had this thought recently about, Groundhog Day, the movie, and this idea of, that's what we're doing every day with our habits, with our patterns. We wake up, we do the same things. And when we actually get conscious of, oh, wait, I can change how I'm spending each day. I can learn new things. I don't have to have an Apple iPhone. I can have a light phone. I can read a book instead of scrolling on social media. I have a choice in how I spend my day. And that literally makes the entire difference about how I spend my life. Is so, that's just like the wake up call that, I think is coming. I think it's here. And it's, it really has such a ripple effect into how we show up. Like the waitress example, right? We tell the waitress about the light phone, and that's an entire new thought bubble for her to explore about how could this look in my life. And the invitation is endless.
Well said.
Yeah, invitation to get back, get your life back, get your time back. Everything we do on life phone, even though we spend most of our resource on making the experience more seamless, getting more essential utility tools on life phone too. But all we wanted to do is to have enough tools so that you could forget about it. So that you could just, go about your day and don't think about your phone because you have the right tool. That's what we're trying to do. So like you can now appreciate everything else but your phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was your journey? So maybe this started in, I'm curious, when you started designing Light Phone and even in that Google experience of like, this is actually the direction we would rather go than the direction we're kind of maybe being encouraged to pursue. What has been in terms of reception from investors, and I think just really doing, a technology company different? What has that reception been like, or experience been like?
I would say one of my favorite aspects, especially coming from a kind of like art background, was just how polarizing it was. So, Kai and I were standing there in this room with a piece of plastic and some Photoshop, no real product to speak of, saying, hey, imagine a phone that does nothing on purpose for $100. And some people are like, oh my God, email's ruining my life, I need this. And other people are like, that's the dumbest idea. What kind of working professional could ever leave email for 3 hours? And then we would almost be like stepping back, and other thought leaders and founders would be having like existential conversations, like, is it a responsible father or, a responsible worker? And, these kinds of deep questions that we just never even thought about when we just let the smartphones into our life. So I think that was really an encouraging spark in the beginning. And Kai and I, it was really obvious from the beginning that we weren't going to just get enough fundraising from investors by going so drastically the other way without really proving that there was a sizable demand for this. So we, as Kai said, we're not anti-technology. We embraced crowdfunding and the internet, and that's how, the two of us versus a large conglomerate like Nokia or Apple or Samsung were able to like kickstart our Light Phone project. And throughout the journey, it's been hard since we're going really against the grain to get investors and partners. But I think because our idea speaks so fundamentally to, these kind of moral and value driven ideas, people are really interested to hear it out. I think there's obviously hesitation about, is this going to be profitable? But I guess when you think about how many billions of smartphones are in the world, and how many different types of people there are, and almost every other product would have such diversity to address the different flavors of people and lifestyles, it seems inevitable that there would be other phone options. So, we have been able to prove that there is a market for people who want a niche little phone. And, maybe there's a dozen other types of phones that aren't a Light Phone or a smartphone that could exist as well. And that's been a really interesting process. And I think also, we see a lot of times people are like, that's so dumb. Why would I ever get a phone that does nothing? And then 6 months later, they're like, I can't stop thinking about your little phone. And I think that's really what I find to be one of the most inspiring parts of the project, is even if someone doesn't buy our phone, we can touch them. And, maybe the next time they're on the toilet scrolling away for an extra 20 minutes, they're like, that stupid Light Phone ad that they did, that's me right now. And so just, we don't try to guilt anyone for not using a Light Phone ever, or like, you're an addict. We're all just as vulnerable. We're just here if you're ready to take the plunge and try the Light Phone. We think it's a worthy thing to try, and there's not much to lose.
Yeah, our investors are really supportive. The ones we have, it's a really different situation 7 years ago when we started. I think this trend or this movement is just getting bigger, or the problem getting worse every year.
Combination, sure.
Smartphone, social media, TikTok. I think the problem is just gonna get worse, and the problem get worse, more people will become aware of what's happening or feel weird about our relationship with technology. And I think we now have investors from Twitter, we have investors from Facebook that coming from completely opposite background, but they also realize that social medias are doing harm at a certain level, and they wanted to do something about it as well. So we have a lot of people supporting us as individual, as a small group of mission aligned investors. And that's how we get where we are today. We have tens of thousands of iPhone users out there. And we spend our time trying to make sure, number one, getting the experience better, and number two, getting more people to feel inspired or encouraged to take that first step. Like when we're not just talking like, everyone can say, oh, disconnect, enjoy your day, but like here, this is an object that designed to help you get off the grids, or just forget about phone. Even though it's a phone, but
Yeah, our I guess for lack of a better term, main marketing recently has been just showcasing existing users, because I think I said before, like everyone says, oh, I wish I could do that. And I think by showing different people that aren't just me and Kai, who obviously we love this deeply, but a mom, how does she get by on a light phone? How does a working CEO, how does a student that's,
yeah,
missing
we're
out on
biased.
social
Don't
media,
listen to us. We're biased, obviously, but like go on,
bias,
I don't know, Reddit, watch people hate it, love it,
hate it,
experience stories, like that's what we wanted to share with people. Like, don't listen to me, like listen, I hear our stories, real people that they struggled with the inconvenience, but then they have this magic moment, magic realization that everything is okay, it's enough.
Yeah. I like that you keep going back to the realization of everything is enough as it is. And, I think that is a really potent and magical realization to have. Okay, my last question, because I don't want to miss this. What's your vision for light? What's your vision for what this can do for our world? Sky's the limit.
Yeah, I mean, almost to your last point of like, there's this magic moment, and that's such a beautiful thing. But the reality is, someone can do a digital detox retreat, spend a few $1,000s away from phones and be like, wow, I'm so relieved, refreshed. And then they come back and their habits are more or less unchanged. Yeah. So I think with Light as a brand, our phone is our first iteration, but we just want to make technology that allows people to create a sustainable balance that they're in control of. They're intentionally choosing, maybe they want to check social media at night. Yes, there's laptops and things that do that, but we want to create products that will help people do one thing well, whether that's future products. I think it's fun to imagine the same lens designed to be used as little as possible, honest business model. We didn't talk about privacy, but that's something people trust.
Light phones a category, different category, like even the laptop that for writers or something else that this specific group, and that just do one thing without advertisement, without trying to make money off your data and attention at all. So I think society need technology like that. And it just, no one's willing to do it. So we wanted to do it ourselves.
Beautiful. Do you have any, let's do a piece of advice for anyone that recognizes that their phone might be a problem in their life, and then a book recommendation.
Well,
Ooh.
for the first point, I would definitely say, like, this weekend, even like try leaving your smartphone for 20 minutes, for 2 hours. Like, you can experience going light and trying it in very small ways that don't cost money, and you don't have to buy your phone or think about what SIM card is going to work and which way. It's like, just try leaving the phone and, see how you feel, and maybe try deleting social media for a week, and then you can come right back. It's always there for you, don't worry. But I think, I don't know, that's something I've encouraged friends to try. Friends of mine that were like, I don't need a light phone, and then they just started taking more and more breaks, and then they're like, actually, it's quite nice not having so much in my pocket at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
Well, so many so many things going in my mind. What do we want to tell people? I mean, Joe touched I think the most important part is to just, making that decision, making that trip, like deciding to taking a
first step.
time. So like, it's really, really important versus trying to just use light phone and without thinking about it, without actually like, making sure you understand what will be, it was thinking through what could happen. I know that's a lot more work, but at the same time, that's how you're gonna make the experience so rewarding versus drowning in inconvenience. Or like, oh, I cannot text an article in 5 seconds. That's so annoying. Like, you shouldn't be texting whole articles in 5 seconds when you try to like actually enjoy your day anyway. So I think that's really important, that, and we are trying to communicate that to our potential users as well. It's not magic pill. It requires, like, you to actually intentionally think through it and doing it, make that whole thing, make that whole time special.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I guess as for book, especially as it relates to the conversation we just had, one that, so many users say they read before kind of jumping on our ship is Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport.
I feel like someone I just had on the podcast a few weeks ago recommended this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely speaking our language very much. But I think if someone is serious about wanting to change their habits, he has a lot of ideas that like don't necessarily involve going full to a light phone, about how to just kind of think about, is this helping me or hurting me, about each piece of technology. And I think there's a lot of fat, so to speak, that you can trim out of your digital life that will make a huge difference just from that. And I mean, full disclosure, he does mention the light phone in the end there, I think. But we didn't know Cal, and it's a great book, I think, for anyone that's just thinking about this. I think it has a lot of helpful suggestions.
Well, we did reach out afterwards, so
yeah, of course.
Just full disclosure, we did reach out to him and wanted to share a light phone with him. Just, obviously thank him for mentioning out of blue, and just tell him that we're on the same page and we love the book.
Yeah, I mean, thank him. His other book, Deep Work, is super interesting too, as it relates to email and stuff. So we're biased, but that one has no light phone mentions at all.
Not sponsored.
Kai, do you have a book rec for us?
Ooh, what's the book called? How to Disappear? I can't remember the name that I recently read. How to Disappear, if I remember correctly. It's just talking about how to prepare yourself to not engage in social media, or the constant distraction and anxiety from anything and everything in your life, because we're always so fully present every day, every hour, people expecting you to text them back in 5 seconds, or emails need to be replied and within time limit. I think the book is talking about how do we prepare ourselves and not feeling that anxiety to try to take a break. It's really fun.
I love these both so much. Thank you. And thank you both for your time, for chatting with us and sharing light, sharing tips about how we can begin that. What is, if anyone's interested, obviously I'll have the links and everything. What's the skinny on the transition to a light phone if someone wants to explore that, dive in?
Yeah, I guess the light phone itself is just an unlocked cell phone. So you need a SIM card. In the US, it works with all the major carriers, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon. We offer our own SIM card plan, actually. And a lot of users get significantly cheaper phone plans because they don't need 40 gigabytes of data to meet their Instagram habits. But, I'd say some people go straight into using the light phone, taking their SIM card right out of their smartphone into this and just never looking back. Other people, it's maybe more of a transitional, I might use my iPhone during the week, switch to this for the weekend. And the phone itself has like a hotspot. So I think that alleviates a lot of that, where people might bring their tablet with them in a bag and then they realize after 2 weeks, like, I never once needed it, but I had the peace of mind that I could hotspot to it if I was so worried I missed an important email. But I think, enough of our users say like, oh, I actually just started changing my habits and realizing I don't need to email at the cafe. Don't need to. But it's an unlocked little cell phone.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you both so much again for your time.
Yeah, our pleasure.
No problem.